Hi, everybody. Welcome to Slingshot Shooting System 2, where we're going to go over killing common cues this week, and we're going to look at what are these cues and your filter on them that allow you to have a shot like this. And we're going to talk about today what is really holding a lot of players back, and it's this filter on their cues. Now, last week we talked about becoming the bow, and it's really the concept of creating slings, creating stretches, and creating passive muscle contractions, for lack of a better term, but passive stretch of your muscles to create your movement for your shot. This week is all about killing those common cues that might be holding you back from really becoming the bow, and bringing a distinction to those cues. So let's jump right in, and we're going to talk about what if the opposite were true. And we're going to talk about filters in a second. And, let's think of some of all the cues that are out there. Things like shift your weight. Do you see Barkov like pushing from 1 foot, or do you see him just literally shifting his weight from 2 feet to 1 foot? Do you see his hand in or out here? Well, you see him out for 1 second, but then it's right back in. Notice that. Do you see him leaning on his stick to flex it? Doesn't look like he's leaning on his stick there, does it? So, a question I want you to ask yourself is, what if the opposite were true? What if there was a cue like hands out, and the cue itself works, but your filter on that cue doesn't work? And what if you tested out another filter on that cue? So that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about 5 killing common cues. And these killing common cues could lead you down 2 paths, right? And it depends on your filter on that cue. So let's just take the hands out filter, for example. And let's go back to Barkov, and then we'll look at Crosby. But let's look at the hands out cue. Are his hands out here? Are his hands out here? How about here? How about here? Well, you could make the argument that his hands are out here. But then, how about here? So what we're doing is we're going to shift the filter in the hands out cue from the hands are out and they stay out. And if you kind of have that filter on the hands out cue, then the result is endless frustration. And we've all been there. But if your filter on the hands out cue is at some point your hands are out, well, the result is Crosby. Let's take a look at Crosby. There he was. Take a look here. Do you see his hand out? Yes, at some point they are. And then how about right there? Hand looks in. So the cue is still the same. The cue is hands out, but your filter on it changes. And this explains why some players hear a cue and it works for them, and they are like, why is no one else understanding this? They should just get it. And this is how NHLers look at the average player, the player without all the skills, is they look at it, well, this coach told me hands out, and I got it, and I'm Crosby. Why don't you get it? Because the filter is different. Crosby's filter on the cues is usually right, and it usually works. And for you, the filter that you have on the common cue might lead you to endless frustration. If you've ever been there, I've been there with you. So that's the first one, hands out. Next one, shift weight. Here's a great one. Now, what's interesting about shifting weight is, the way that it's kind of described is that you're actually driving off your back leg, right? But the thing is, you're not really actually driving off your back leg. If you look here, look at how when Crosby receives the pass, most of his weight is actually right here, right? That's where most of his weight is. And you can kind of take my word for it. Now, as he receives that puck, notice how his weight shifts to his left foot. So the weight kind of shifts over here. And so, in terms of the common cue, shift your weight, if your filter is drive off your back leg, guess what you're going to get? Endless frustration. But if your filter is, well, the weight just like kind of shifts from one foot, like what we see with Crosby here, when we see him just have most of his weight here, then he shifts over to here. Like it literally is just a little weight shift. Like most of his weight, let's say 75% was here, and now 75% is here. It's not driving off the back leg at all, but if you have that as your filter, if this is your filter here, you're going to have endless frustration. But if this is your filter here, the same cue applies, and the result is Crosby. Next killing common cue, core tight. And what a lot of players have with this core tight is, let's take a look at Pettersson here. This is a great example of it. Is they look at him and they say, oh, you need to keep your core tight. And you always hear this thing like, oh, keep your core still and don't have it move. Well, let's look here at Pettersson and take a look and say, does he really have his core that tight? His spine and shoulders are kind of all over the place, aren't they? Now, what has to happen here in order to make this shot happen is the energy has to transfer from his legs into his arms. Now, how does that happen? It has to happen through his core. So his core needs to be stable, and he needs to transfer energy, but he can't hold a really tight core there. And so this is a killing common cue. And it's, do you hold a bunch of tension and hold it square and hold it firm, or do you transfer your energy through your core? And another one here is flexing the stick. This is a really, really common cue. And one filter is like, oh, push your stick into the ice. Well, let's take a look at MacKinnon here. Does he really push his stick into the ice in this shot? No, it's kind of like a sauce. And you can actually kind of see that from this sauce, the puck and the leverage of his hand actually creates that flex on the stick, doesn't it? So it's right here like this. See that flex? Okay, another great example is I love this example here. Again, no actual leaning on the stick, but the puck and a bit of ice friction creates that flex on the stick. So, what some people do for their filter when they hear the term flex the stick is they think, oh, I better push my stick into the ice, and I was here for sure. The result? Endless frustration. But if what you're thinking is like, oh, I need to become the bow, but, while I'm becoming the bow, my stick can also become the bow. And I can actually kind of use the coil of my stick to my advantage. Well, then, the result is Crosby. You end up being like Crosby. And that's another killing common cue. Now, the last one we'll go over, and there's lots, but the last one we'll go over is the twitch. This is a really common cue from some well-known shooting coaches. And, one filter is like, oh, make sure to twitch, right? It's all about the twitch. It's all about the push-pull. And again, the cue isn't wrong because, let's take a look back at Crosby here. The cue is not wrong. He's definitely got that twitch. Boom. So you can kind of see the hand pulls, the top hand pulls back, right? And the bottom hand kind of pushes forward slightly. Boom. So there's definitely a twitch. And we can go to MacKinnon and see the same thing. You can definitely see the twitch. The twitch isn't wrong, right? That cue is real. But again, it's how people interpret it. And, is your filter on it that you should like twitch with a ton of tension? If yes, you'll have a resulting endless frustration. But if your filter is, hey, let's use the elasticity of our arms, well, then the result is Crosby. And let me show you what that is a little bit here. So with Crosby, what's happening is he's using his arms to create the bow. So you'll see here, he receives it, and then you can actually see this little moment where he tilts his elbow up, and that's creating the stretch across his back. And then that's where he creates that preload, and then he causes the twitch from using the elasticity of his arms. And the result is Crosby. So what I want you to consider is, what if the opposite were true? What if the cue itself might have been right, but your filter on it doesn't work? And what if your filter on it needs to be tested out in a different way? Well, this week your coaching is to do just that. And it's you're going to do a lot of reps of passes and shots. And what you're going to do is you're going to hear the cue, hands out, tight core, shift your weight, twitch. But you're going to change your filter on it. You're going to think with the hands out, you're going to say, maybe I'm just getting my hands out for a moment. When you're thinking of the tight core cue, you're going to change your filter, which is, well, maybe the core needs to be tight enough to transfer energy, but not too tight to stop it. And shifting your weight might literally be about just having your weight gently shift from one foot to the other, not driving off your back leg. And twitching might be to do with the elasticity. You can use the stretch of your arms to create that twitch. Now, once you've done this with passes, then you're going to repeat it with shots. You're going to film at least 3 reps per shot, post it to the Train 2.0 Facebook group, review, or have a coach review it. That's your coaching. And really do this coaching, because changing the filter is going to change your shot. Now, like I said, this is all about killing the common cues that are going to prevent you from really shooting the way that your body is capable of shooting. It's going to kill some of these mechanical issues and the endless frustration that you have. So change your filter on it. It's mostly a mindset thing, and that leads to your mechanics. And in next week, we're going to take all of these components and we're going to talk about aiming 2.0. And that's where becoming the bow and killing those common cues is really going to shine in aiming 2.0, where it's easier to aim than ever, and in a completely, as you guessed it with Train 2.0, non-intuitive way. So we'll see you next week. Thanks for watching.